There's no getting around it. Gelatin comes from flesh and bones. It's the translucent, glutinous substance that skims to the top when you boil meat. But if you collect enough of it and purify it, adding color and flavor, it becomes something else, Jello. A clean powder in a packet, far removed from its abattoir origins of marrow and connective tissue. We don't think much about the origins of Jello today, but in the late 1800s, if you wanted to put a jiggly treat on your dinner table, you had to make it the hard way, putting offcuts in a stew pot and waiting a half day for the hydrolyzed collagen to emerge from the gristle. In 1895, Pearl Waite, a carpenter in Leroy, New York, with a side business of patent medicine packaging, sat at his kitchen table poking at a bowl of gelatin. He'd been wanting to get into the then-new packaged foods business and thought this might be the stuff if only he could figure out how to make it more appealing. Although glue makers had been producing it for decades as a byproduct of their animal rendering, it had yet to prove popular with American consumers. For good reason. It was a lot of work for a pretty small reward. Waite wondered if there might be a way to take gelatin more mainstream. Earlier efforts to sell prepackaged powder gelatin, including by the inventor of the process, Peter Cooper, of Cooper Union fame, sold it plain and unflavored on the argument that this was the most flexible form. Cooks could add their own flavors. But Waite thought that pre-flavored gelatins might sell better, so he mixed in fruit juices, along with sugar and food dyes. The jelly took on the color and flavor of the fruits, orange, lemon, raspberry, and strawberry, creating something that looked, smelled, and tasted appealing. Colorful, light, and delightful to play with, it was a treat that could add jiggly, translucent fun to almost any meal. To distance the stuff further from its abattoir origins, his wife, May, renamed it Jello. They boxed it up to sell. But it didn't sell. Jello was too foreign a food and too unknown a brand for turn-of-the-century consumers. Kitchen traditions were still based on Victorian recipes, where every food type had its place. Was this new jelly a salad ingredient or a dessert? For 2 years, Waite kept trying to stir up interest in Jello with little success. Eventually, in 1899, he gave up and sold the trademark, name, hyphen, and all, to Orator Frank Woodward, a fellow townsman. The price was $450. Woodward was a natural salesman, and he had settled in the right place. Leroy had been something of a 19th century huckster hotbed, best known for its patent medicine makers. Woodward sold plenty of miracle cures and was creative with plaster of Paris, too. He marketed plaster target balls for marksmen and invented a plaster laying nest for chickens that was infused with an anti-lice powder. But even Woodward's firm, the Genesee Pure Food Company, struggled to find a market for powdered gelatin. It was a new product category with an unknown brand name in an era where general stores sold almost all products from behind the counter, and customers had to ask for them by name. The Jello was manufactured in a nearby factory run by Andrew Samuel Nico. Sales were so slow and disheartening for the new product that on one gloomy day, while contemplating a huge stack of unsold Jello boxes, Woodward offered Nico the whole business for $35. Nico refused. The main problem was that consumers didn't understand the product or what they could do with it. And without consumer demand, merchants wouldn't stock it. Manufacturers of other products in the new packaged ingredient business, such as Arm & Hammer baking soda and Fleischmann's yeast, often bundled recipe books with their boxes. Woodward figured a usage guidebook might help create demand for Jello, too, but how to get them out there? Nobody was buying the boxes in the first place. So in 1902, Woodward and his marketing chief, William Hummelbaugh, tried something new. First, they crafted a 3-inch ad to run in Ladies' Home Journal at a cost of $336. Rather optimistically proclaiming Jello America's most famous dessert, the ad explained the appeal of the product. This new dessert, quote, could be served with a simple addition of whipped cream or thin custard. If, however, you desire something very fancy, there are hundreds of delightful combinations that can be quickly prepared, end quote. Then, to illustrate all these richly varied combinations, Genesee printed up tens of thousands of pamphlets with Jello recipes and gave them to its salesmen to distribute to homemakers for free. This cleverly got around the salesman's chief problem. As they traveled around the country in their buggies, they were prohibited from selling door-to-door in most towns without a costly traveling salesman's license. But the cookbooks were different. Giving things away wasn't selling. They could knock on doors and just hand the women of the house a free recipe book, no strings attached. Printing paper was cheap compared to making Jello. They couldn't afford to give out free samples of the product itself, so they did the next best thing, free information that could only be used if the consumer bought the product. After blanketing a town with the booklets, the salesman would then go to the local merchants and advise them that they were about to get a wave of consumers asking for a new product called Jello, which they would be wise to stock. The boxes of Jello in the back of the buggies finally started to move. By 1904, the campaign had turned into a runaway success. 2 years later, Jello hit $1 million in annual sales. The company introduced the Jello Girl in its ads, and the pamphlets grew into Jello bestseller recipe books. In some years, Genesee printed as many as 15 million of the free books, and in the company's first 25 years, it printed and distributed an estimated 250 million free cookbooks door to door across the country.